Hola y bienvenidos a todos. Hi and welcome everyone to our Speech Bubble Languages Spanish Language Clinic with me, Louise, from Speech Bubble Languages HQ. As you can see from our title screen, today we are going to be exploring some grammar, namely the imperfect tense in Spanish. Let's crack on then with our session, shall we? In previous sessions, we have learned about how in Spanish we have three separate past tenses, and their names are the preterite, the imperfect, and the perfect tense. The preterite we've checked in another slide. Here's the imperfect that we're going to check out today, and the perfect. So take a little moment, if you aren't familiar with these expressions, to study the differences between the preterite, imperfect, and the perfect using the examples. The preterite, I played, I did play. The imperfect, I was playing or I used to play. And the perfect, I have played. So obviously we're looking at the imperfect today, and there's other videos where you can explore the preterite and the perfect as well, if you'd like to do a bit more grammar after this one. So let's take a look at some examples of the imperfect tense in action. The first thing that we use the imperfect tense for is to describe what somebody or something was like in the past. For example, hacía mucho sol durante la semana. There was a lot of sun. It was very sunny during the week. Era viejo. Era viejo. He was old. So we're describing somebody or something in the past. We use the imperfect tense as well to talk about something that used to happen in the past, perhaps something that went on for a long period of time in your childhood, for example. The examples here we have are veíamos la tele cada día. We used to watch TV every day. Vivía en Camberley durante muchos años. I, or this could be he, she, or it, lived in Camberley for several years. And nadaba en la piscina del hotel. I used to swim in the hotel swimming pool. The final way that we use the imperfect tense is to talk about what something was going on or what somebody was doing when another action interrupted it. For example, here we have llovía cuando fui a casa. It was raining when I went home. No salió porque llovía. He didn't go out because it was raining. Los estudiantes estaban muy contentos cuando recibieron sus notas. The students were very happy when they received their grades. So for those of you who are familiar with our classes and our chronogrammer, our timeline, you can see here on the left-hand side where the imperfect tense sits on our timeline. So he's in the past, and he can also be used in combination with the preterite tense in Spanish too. So how exactly do we form the imperfect tense? The great news, everyone, is that the imperfect tense is one of the most straightforward and simple tenses we can learn in Spanish. Let's start, as we always do, with our friend hablar, our representative of the lovely AR verb group. We obviously have our lovely pronouns in Spanish, which we can use or not use, because remember the verb's going to do all the work for us anyway and tell us who's doing that action. So let's stick hablar on the side and remove his AR badge there to leave the stem habl. So what do we add on after this then in the imperfect tense? So to say I used to speak, we would say hablaba. You used to speak or were speaking, hablabas. He, she, or it used to speak or was speaking, hablaba once again. When it moves to we have a big ending accent in the middle here, hablábamos. You plural, hablabais. And finally, hablaban for they. Shall we say it together? Hablaba, hablabas, hablaba, hablábamos, hablabais, hablaban. If you study those endings really carefully, you might note that with the exception of the AB that it starts with, the endings are very similar to the present tense of AR verbs, aren't they? We've got that as, amos, ice, and an on the end there. Let's say it one more time before we move on. Hablaba, hablabas, hablaba, hablábamos, hablabais, hablaban. Remember, it's your job to try to memorize that too, isn't it? So let's put some activities together here and see what you can do for me with these imperfect tenses. Down the left-hand side, we have some verbs. Caminar, dibujar, hablar, that we met a moment ago, mirar, and trabajar, all AR verbs. Can you put these sentences into the imperfect tense then and correctly conjugate those verbs? There's some little bits of extra there in the brackets if you want to push yourself further to complete the sentence. But the most important thing is obviously getting the verb itself correct. Watch out, the verbs in the green box are not in the order that you need to use them in. So hit pause here as you work your way through the task. So we have number 1, caminaba a la escuela. 2, miraba la tele. 3, trabajaban en el aire libre. You could even say afuera there too if you prefer. Dibujábamos un jardín. And finally, hablabas francés. How did you get on? I hope you did well. But remember, there are other groups of verbs in Spanish, aren't there? There are 3 in total. We're taking a look at AR, so let's take a look at the pattern for the other 2 groups, ER and IR. So let's stick our pal Comer at the top. He represents all our lovely ER regular verbs in Spanish. Remove his final 2 letters as we're used to doing. And now look carefully at the pattern of endings now for the imperfect tense. So I used to eat or I was eating. Comía. You. Comillas. He, she, or it. Comía. We. Comíamos. You plural. Comíais. And they comían. So there is an accent on the I all the way down there, making a nice E sound in the back of your throat. Let's say it together. Comía, comillas, comilla, comíamos, comíais, comían. Well done. Let's switch it to vivir. Let's remove those IRs so we can get our stem. And shall you say them along with me as soon as you say them? Vivía, vivías, vivía, vivíamos, vivíais, vivían. What did you notice, everyone? Yep, the endings are the same. Excellent. So our ER and IR verbs are going to do the exact same thing. They're ganging up together. Let's put it into practice, shall we? Down the left-hand side in our green box, we've got romper, correr, comer, and elegir and discutir. So a wee range of ER and IR verbs for you to put into practice. Just similarly to the previous activity, can you conjugate the verbs correctly? And if you want a little extra, finish off the sentence by including a translation of the bits in brackets. Hit pause here as you work your way through that task. So we have corríamos de la policía. Comía las verduras. Elegía salir tarde. Rompías las promesas. If you went for the you plural here, rompíais las promesas. And finally, discutían el fútbol. I hope you did well with that task. Well done, everybody. So we've met the regulars. Yeah, we know what are AR verbs making that ABA sound. And we know that the ER and IR verbs make an E sound for their endings, don't they? But of course, as always, we're going to now tell you about all the verbs that don't do that, all the irregulars, all the verbs that don't behave. But wait for this. There are always verbs which don't follow our pattern. However, in the imperfect tense, there are only 3 irregulars. 3 verbs. Out of every single verb that you can have in the Spanish language, there are only 3 verbs in this tense, the imperfect, that are irregular. Wow. If only all verb tenses could be like that in Spanish. Shall we take a look at them then? So ser, ir, and ver are our troublemakers in this tense. Let's take the verb ser, meaning to be. He is era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. So I used to be, it was. Ir, iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, iban. You can see they're almost exactly the same endings as the one before. So Sarah and you're looking really similar to each other here in terms of their endings. So iba, I used to go. Bear, I like to say, doesn't belong in the imperfect groups. Let's take a little look at them and then I'll explain why. Veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, veían. Why am I saying he doesn't really belong in that group? Well, if you look really carefully, he is taking the ER endings, isn't he? Making that E sound. Where does the irregularity come into play? Well, he's not dropped the E and R from the infinitive, isn't it? No, he's actually held on to the E before the endings are stuck on. So to put him in the irregular category, yes, he's irregular, isn't he? But he maybe doesn't deserve to be there. Well done, everyone. I hope that little session has been really useful for you. What do you need to know now going forward? You need to be memorizing those AR endings and our ER-IR endings for the imperfect tense and try to memorize ser, ear, and bear. Hasta la próxima a todos. Until next time, everyone. Adiós y muchas gracias. Hasta la próxima. Adiós.